In this episode, we're going to do major surgery on a Sony GV-D800. I'm going to replace the video head on it, as the one that's in here appears to be wearing out. It keeps getting clogged up every time I use it. And I'm going to take the head drum out of a Digital 8 camera that I picked up on the cheap because it has some other faults. But the head in it is good, so let's do a head swap. Today I'm going to do a heart transplant on this little Digital 8 player because I believe the heads are worn on this one, and I'm going to take the heads out of a camera that I acquired that has some other problems, but I believe the head is okay. Let's just first of all confirm that this one here is bad. You'll notice that the picture is going to break up, and it's not going to play. You might want to grab yourself a coffee because I think this video is going to be a long one. Now what happens on this unit here is if I clean the head with the head cleaning tape, it'll play for a couple minutes, and then once again it will get contaminated. It doesn't matter what tape I put in this thing. Sometimes just taking the tape out and reloading it will make it work momentarily. But it doesn't matter. It'll play for a few minutes, and then the head gets contaminated once again. So I've got no picture. Let me go get a head cleaning tape. We'll run a head cleaning tape through there for 5 seconds, and you'll see that we'll get a picture. So we'll run this tape through for about 5 seconds or so. So now it's going to start playing. Okay, play. And there, now it's moving. The tape is moving. So 2, 3, 4, 5. Reading the time code. Here, this tape was recorded in 2001, and I can let this play for a few minutes, and what we will see happen is if I let this play for a couple minutes, it's going to go back to the blocks again. The picture's going to freeze up, and we're going to have our contaminated heads again. So what I think is happening on this is one of the heads itself may have a little chip on the head, and it's becoming contaminated, and it's an ongoing issue. And of course, every time I run the head cleaning tape through, it'll clean it off for a few minutes, and then it will get contaminated again. This is a video I did a number of years ago, 2001 to be exact, and this was out in Burnaby for their Hats Off Day, and this local band here hired me to shoot their little gig for them. So we put a camera up on the roof and locked it off basically, and then I was using a pro camera, handheld, a big pro camera, and filmed this thing for them. You can, I don't know how it comes across on the little screen here, but there's a big difference in the terms of the picture quality between a high-end pro camera and the consumer camera that was being worked up on the roof. It's going to make a liar out of me now, and it's not going to clog the head. We'll just let it play for a few minutes here, because it will contaminate the head again. Oh, there I was in that shot with my big camera. I don't know if you saw that or not, but there. There I am, down on the ground there with my big camera. I'll show it to you on the other screen. So that's what I'm using. I'm using one of my pro cameras when I was shooting this in 2001. And now, of course, this thing's making a liar out of me and the heads haven't contaminated again, but we'll give it a few minutes and it will go bad, guaranteed. Starting to do it a bit. I'm just waiting. I just saw some break up there, so it should go out any time now. It's been playing for about 5 minutes, and it should go out any time now. And it'll just go to a snowstorm, or it won't go to a snowstorm. It'll go to pixelation because this is recorded digitally, right? So if it was an analog tape, the picture would gradually go to snow and fade away. Digital will keep putting out a signal until it drops out, and then once it drops below a specific threshold, then boom, it's gone. There, see, it's starting to do it now. Picture's starting to freeze up a bit. You also notice that the sound pixelating. The sound is also gone. It should drop out any second now. But anyway, it won't take long, and then it'll just completely go. Okay, you can see the picture starting to band there, right? It's starting to freeze up. That's the problem this one has. It's the head is now. One of the heads is starting to drop out, or both of them, but it's getting contaminated. As you can see, now it's starting to freeze up, and it's starting to pixelate. So that's the problem I've got with this unit, and this is an ongoing problem. I can clean the heads, and it'll play for 5-10 minutes, and then it'll start doing this again, repeatedly, over and over again. So that's why we're going to do a head swap. Anyway, there you go. That what's happening now is the head is starting to clog up. So the head itself is worn. So what I'm going to do is I've got a donor unit here, little digital 8 camera, that the head is fine, but this one has some other problems. What's wrong with this one is the DV port is no good. This thing here, the DV input output, does not work on this one. So because this is a more useful deck in the fact that for archiving, the fact that it's got your conventional AV outputs, S-video in and out, it's got an AV input, and it's got the FireWire on the back here. This is a more useful machine from an archiving standpoint to have a machine like this that's working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the head. I'm going to remove the head from this camera, the whole drum. I'm going to change the whole entire drum assembly, so I don't have to worry about alignment. It should just be able to just unscrew it from one and plug it into the other. That's the hope anyway. So before I tear this one apart, let's get the donor head out of the camcorder, and then we'll at that point we'll get into this and install it in the other one. So I guess first things first, we'll open up the camera. I'll power it up and open up the cassette compartment. Try and make this an easy part swap. some of the arrow mark screws. I've never changed one of these heads before on one of these Digital 8 decks. I've changed 8mm heads before, but these ones here are different because I don't think the upper cylinder, I could be wrong, but I don't believe the upper cylinder separates on these. It's a precision unit, and when it was replaced as an entire assembly. That's what I understand anyway. As I say, I've never changed one, so I could be wrong. DV and DAT are the same. The entire drum's sold as one assembly. In fact, it's been a while since I've opened up one of these camcorders. I've got one just like this, but the one that I've got works. So that's why I didn't do this before. But this one doesn't work properly. I've actually got two Digital 8 cameras. I've got one just like this, and I've got a DCR TRV-110. And it's a single speed. This one will do SP and LP. So I picked this one up as a parts donor unit. And the TRV-110 is just SP only. So if this works out, I'll have my GV-D800 as a third. And that's what I'm using it for. Unit. Of course, I'll put the drum from the other deck back into this one, so it'll be functional. It'll just be functional with a worn head. Of course, the beauty of these particular units is that they will play back both Video 8 and High 8 analog tapes, as well as record and play in Digital 8. So for archiving, these are the ultimate machine to use because they can play tapes made on any of the 8mm formats. Some of the newer Digital 8 cameras that Sony made, or the lower end Digital 8, like the TRV-130 for example, can only play Digital 8 tapes. It cannot play analog 8mm or analog High 8 tapes. So that makes these ones here a little more sought after. And the fact that this particular camera, the FireWire port is kind of buggered up on, means this one doesn't have the value that the other ones do, because I can use the other ones to go directly into my DVD recorder or my PC. This side, maybe not. I'm sure there's more screws. Yeah, there's two more. I think these two screws here have to come out, and then this side should come off. And then I'll be able to see what holds the drum in place. Should just be a couple of ribbon connectors that undo from it. One for the motor and one for the head, and then it should just unscrew with a couple of screws, I hope. Okay, that's off. We'll undo that. Okay, what holds this in place? See, the drum doesn't come off of the upper drum doesn't come off on these ones because it's got this balanced assembly. They have these little ball bearings that they inserted. These were precision balanced, because the speed of the drum is much higher on the Digital 8 than it was on regular 8mm. Even though the tape is the same and the tape wrap is the same, because a lot more information was required to be written to a Digital 8 tape. On a conventional analog recording, the head drum spins at 1800 RPM, like all conventional VCRs. But when the Digital 8 format was recording and playing in the Digital 8 mode, the drum speed was increased to 4500. So this thing is just screaming when it's recording and playing in Digital 8. It still runs at 1800 when it's in the analog mode, but when it's in the digital mode, it's running much faster, and that required a much more precision balance. Otherwise, you'd end up with a head drum that was, at that speed, if the balance wasn't perfect, you'd end up with a head that was wobbling. So they, unlike the conventional ones, these ones here, they actually precision balanced it and put these little ball bearings in at various places to make sure that the head was perfectly balanced, just like balancing a tire on your car, where they stick little weights onto the inside of the wheel to make your car tire balanced. One thing I did notice is these things have got these little foams on them, so maybe that's what's causing this head to get contaminated, is this little foam wheel. I didn't think about that. Maybe the foam wheel on this one is worn out. It's very possible that that's where my contamination's coming from. Didn't think about that one, but that might be the problem. Might not be the head, might be just the contamination. But I'll take that stupid wheel off when I've got it apart, because these things do wear out, and they do, when they do break down, they'll end up putting more crap back onto the head than they remove. Even if that is the case, though, I'm still going to want to swap the heads, just because the other deck that I've got, it has hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of hours. It probably has 2,000 hours of use on it. So even at that, it would be worn out, I would think, just from the sheer number of hours that it has on it, just from its normal use. Because I used to use the Digital 8 deck when I was doing production work. I used to use that as a slave recorder for when I was editing. I shot a lot of stuff on mini DV back when I was dealing with DV tapes, and I didn't export back to mini DV. I exported to Digital 8. The reason for that was because in the long play speed, a 180 minute tape, because Digital 8 ran the tape at twice the speed of analog, so a 120 minute tape became a 60 minute tape. But in the EP speed, it would run for 90 minutes. Well, 90 minutes sometimes is not long enough when you're doing a long form production such as a wedding. But in the LP speed, it would run for, I think it was 2 hours and 15 minutes. You could get these 180 minute tapes, which would be 3 hours on 3 hours on analog, but in digital they would be 90 minutes. But in the LP speed, you picked up 1.5 times that, so it was like 2 hours and 15 minutes. Which was long enough. When I was doing weddings, I typically limited them to 2 hours. So a tape that would run for 2 hours and 15 minutes was more than enough for me to do a full wedding on one tape. I wouldn't have to change tapes. So I used to use the deck a lot when I was doing weddings, just because it let me put everything on one tape. I didn't have to edit and do multiple tapes. I could do 2 hours. So I've got lots of tapes that I had recorded in LP, and I used to use the Digital 8 format just because it would give me more than 90 minutes. Because mini DV, the maximum time you could record on mini DV was 90 minutes, even in the LP speed. And the LP speed on digital should never ever be used, ever, unless you're going to play it back on the same machine that made the recording, because there was no interchangeability on LP on any of the digital formats. All the digital formats, if you used LP, if you tried to play it on a different machine, chances are it would not play. But if we look at the head drum on my other one, you'll see it's not nice and shiny like this one. This one here, the drum, if you look at the upper drum is really nice and shiny, and you'll see when I pull the other one out of the other deck, this is not shiny. This is all dull because it's had a lot of wear, because it's got tons and tons of hours. So I want to change the head drum. Even if the contamination was coming from a bad cleaning wheel, which it could be because it's old, the head drum itself has got a lot of hours on it. So we're going to change the drum, and I'm going to remove that cleaning wheel. I just got to get down to the drum so that I can actually remove it, and that's part of the fun, is tearing this thing apart and seeing where everything goes to get down to it. The other one should be just as much fun as this camera to open up. Actually, it's probably going to be more work than the camera when I get into it. This job, literally, to do this, I was working on this for a little over 4 hours. And of course, remembering where everything goes once I'm done, right? Okay, that's part of the drum there. I don't know where it's held on. It's got to be held on from the bottom, I think. It's not going to be these plastic pieces that are around it. It's going to be screwed into the bottom. We'll remove the battery compartment, the battery connectors here. Plug there. Camera's got to come off this as well, I believe. Have a bit of a windy day out there today. You can hear the wind. Here's the night shot switch. What that does is that removes the filter, the infrared cut filter. When you flick that switch, it removes the infrared cut filter. There's got to be another screw holding this thing in here somewhere. Just can't see it. It's probably back here underneath this chassis. Undo these connectors. Take out this little board too. Make it a long plug. Screw through here. Now I'm intentionally not cutting anything out on this disassembly because I want you to see how much work goes into opening these cameras up and putting them together. There's a lot of work that goes in, and this is one of the reasons why these were so expensive when you had a camcorder repaired back in the day when people were fixing camcorders. This is why it costs so much to get these things fixed, because the amount of work required just to get at anything, to change anything, you were spending a good hour tearing it down. Very small parts, precision parts, and they're just a procedure. One of the reasons it's a good idea to film whenever you're working on things like this, to film it, is so that if you can't figure out how to put it back together, you can always go back and look at your footage. This circuit board should lift out of this thing. If I've got all the screws out, I should be able to lift the board out, and that'll access the bottom of the drum. If I can, or maybe this one's got to come out too. I think this top's got to come off. Dad, it's been so long since I've taken apart a camera, I forget all the steps that have to be done to do it. As we used to say in the shop, that's why I got paid the big bucks, because I had to deal with this crap regularly. And when I was fixing cameras, I never really enjoyed it. It was always one of these, every time I had a camera to work on, it was a job that I dreaded. I just did not enjoy working on cameras, and I still don't enjoy working on cameras. Okay, that's there, and this should lift out of here. Might be this one. There we go. Now the camera will lift off. Should be another plug in here somewhere. It has to come undone. There's two plugs. There's one right here. And there's another one over up the front here. It's part of the hot shoe. But I don't really need to remove that. I can probably remove the hot shoe itself, or I'll just leave it. Shouldn't have to do that. I just want to take the board out of here now, and the board should lift out. Might be one or two more screws holding this board in place. I think it's just this one here. And the board should lift out. Well, now you know why these cameras still work. Look, no BGA components, just surface mount, no BGA. That's why they still work. Circuit board over here, flexible board. And there's one more connector I gotta undo for the input-output board. And that's it. Now the camera is out of the way. Now the drum should be held in place by, I think there's just 3 screws here that hold it in. Should be just that one, and that one, and the drum should lift out. These are going to have little springs on them to hold them in place. And then when the third one comes out, the drum should drop out. Put my hand underneath there to support it. And then the drum will just lift out. Should lift out. Oh, it's got this plastic piece over top of it here. It's holding it in place. Should have done this with the cassette up. There's the head drum out of the way. We'll just push this piece back down for now. So there's the drum removed as one solid piece. You can see that it's got 3 heads on it. Okay, it's got a flying erase head there, and then the first head there, and the second head there. And as you can see, even the bottom has little weights, little ball bearings on here to balance it. So this was replaced as an entire assembly. So we'll set that one out of the way for now. I'm going to set the camera out of the way, and then we'll get to working on taking the other machine apart and swapping the head out on it, and then I'm going to put the other head back into the camera, and hopefully both of them will still work. Just the newer head on, or the head with less hours, they're both old, but the head with less hours will be on this one. So I'm just going to push this one out of the way for now. I'll set it out of the way. Along with the head out of the way. And now get to work at disassembling this unit. This one here is going to be a challenge on its own because again, I've never taken apart one of these units either. But I'll do this one in the unloaded position, which it is now. Okay, I've got to take out the screws to lift off this top of this switch cover first. This should lift off. Keep my screws separate for the two of them. This should lift off now, if I'm not mistaken. It comes off the switch cover. Arrow mark screws on the bottom. This was for an optional tuner that would have been available for this unit. I don't know if it ever was available, but there was a tuner that was available for it. I just dropped one of the screws. Oh well, I'll have to find one for it. There was an optional tuner available for this thing at one time, so you could turn this into a home deck. I don't know that anybody ever did that, but that was the design of it. Now this head drum here, it'll have the same connectors on the bottom. That's the two of them there, for the head and for the motor. No, for the motor and for the preamp. I think that's it. No, this is the head, the drive circuitry, and this one here should be the preamp going into here. That's what it should be. But as you can see, this is going to be a lot more work to take this thing apart, I think, than it was to take apart the camera. I got to take off all this, take the screen off and take off the entire chassis to get at it to the point where I can actually even get to the head drum. Two more screws here. Two more over here. These units had what was called the IR, or not the IR, the laser link, super laser link in this case. All these Sonys had this little laser link. There was an infrared transmitter right here that would send the audio and video wirelessly to an infrared receiver, and I have that infrared receiver. So you didn't even have to plug this into your TV. You could just send it wirelessly from the camera over an infrared beam. How cool was that? And I have that receiver. I should dig it up sometime and give you guys a test and show you how it works. Okay, this whole deck I think should lift out from the bottom. Gotta find out what screws hold it in place. And it should hopefully lift out. Take the battery pack out of here. Be very careful when you're undoing these ribbon cables, because they are not very forgiving and they will break, they will tear very, very easily. And that is the one thing you don't want to do, especially when something is this age, because you're never going to find one of these flexible printed circuit boards if you damage it. If you damage one of these things, this thing is history. So you gotta be so careful taking off all the little bits of sticky tape and stuff that they can get hung up on. As you can see, there's a bunch of them here that have to be all undone, so that there's no chance of damaging anything. Do those two little tabs on either side there, and then this one will lift out. I got all those ones out. There's just this one last one here that's giving me some headaches. And it appears to be for this. On this side. This one here, when I went to pull it out, it didn't want to come apart. There we go. There we go. Now it's out. And then one last one here. There we go. I think that's all the flexible tabs. Oh, there's one more tab over here. Okay, now this board should be able to be lifted out. I still have to get the chassis out though in order to get the head drum out. But once I have the board out, I should be able to lift the chassis out, no problem. What's holding it in place? Is there anything on the bottom? Another screw maybe over here. This is another arrow mark screw right there. It just dropped into it. Have to retrieve once I get it apart. The whole deck wants to lift out now, which is what I want. There we go. The whole deck lifts out. What's it attached with? Just this one extra wire. Okay, where'd that screw go that fell in there? There it is. Get that screw out of the way. Undo this plug. I'll undo this plug as well. Oh, the hell with it. One more screw over here. Actually, two more. I got to remove this other little circuit board. It's the power supply. Interesting. Looks like there's some leakage on this thing. Look at this. Looks like there's a bit of moisture, although there hasn't been, but we'll clean that up before I put it back together. There's the board out. And here is the mechanism. The drum is held in place by, there's two of the three screws, but there's another screw underneath here. So this chassis has to come out of this as well. This is like all metal. Interesting. A little more involved on this one than the prior one, that's for sure. There's the mode switch, by the way, if it ever needs to be cleaned. It's like the most impossible place to get at. Is with where they've put it. Ridiculous. I have had one of these apart like this before because I did change once. I did change this keypad that failed, so I had to have this taken down almost to this point to change this, because that connector where it plugs in, I had to have this chassis out once. Not quite as torn down to this as it is now, but close. Should be a catch that I can release that will pop this open, wherever it is. Right there. Now I remember in 2002 I was doing a reno and they had the roof open and it rained and my office got rained on. And some water got on my desk and this got wet because it buggered up the keypads on the top. The function controls got wet and I had to change them, and I guess some water got into it and got onto that board when that happened. So now I was thinking back, where would water come from? And then I remembered what I should be doing, cutting my lawn. That I had a bit of a roof leak. They were just doing the roof of my house when I was renovating it, and they had the overhang was off, and it started raining, and the water started pouring off the overhang and came in through a window and all over my desk, and this particular unit got wet. Nothing else got wet, but the little Digital 8 player got wet. Get this out of here. Trying to see how it's put together. It should just slide out. I think if I take off this front, these 3 screws on the front here, I think it will, the mechanism will slide out the back. Hope. This should slide back and lift off. What the heck is holding it up? You can see the catches here, right? It should slip back and lift off. If I get this right. Okay, it should lift up at the back, I think. This plate have to come? This plate probably has to come off the bottom. Yeah, I think that plate has to come off the bottom first. There's 3 more screws. You guys learning anything? These were a technician's nightmare, these things. Really. That plate comes off, and then this should lift. It drops out, and then this cover should lift off. Come on, lift out. Lift out, damn it. Now, I can change the drum. Get the new drum here. Get the old drum. Remove the 3 screws. 3. Drop out the old drum. You can see the wear on this one here. And then we'll take the other drum, which is exactly the same. We'll drop it back in place. Goes in one way. There's little keyways on here to line it up, and then the 3 screws go back into the bottom. Notice the toothed belt there for the capstan motor that drives the reels. That's a good indication that these units were built to last and not have to be serviced. But then this thing was over $1,000. These little players, they weren't cheap. Like one of these little video Walkmans cost as much as a camcorder or more. But they were built really well. See, these have got little springs on them to limit the tension. So they keep the drum centered. It floats. Put in the screws and just snug them up. You don't want to tighten them too tight because you're going into holding into plastic. But that's it. The screw is down in place. This little foam wheel is coming out of this thing just because these things give nothing but trouble. This is too much work to take this thing apart to take it out later. So there's that. Now I can start reassembling this mechanism and put it back together. Of course, now it comes apart. See, now this thing lifts apart easily when I've got the whole mechanism out. Don't touch. That must be a very flimsy part. They say do not touch it. Plastic lever there. That goes back in like that, and then the base has to go on this thing. That, I believe. It sits in here first. That's what it does. And then this other piece goes down over top of it, if I'm not mistaken. Put the drill out of the way so it doesn't get damaged any more than it is. Goes in just like that. And it slides forward. These little catches will line up here. And we can put the screws in to hold the bottom in here. Here's the screws on the bottom. For a laugh, while I was editing this, I looked up a GV-D800 on Amazon.com, and there's one available. If you want one, it's only going to cost you $1,571 US. That's what these things go for today. As I say, they were over $1,000. I think I probably paid about $1,200 wholesale when I bought this. They haven't gone down; they've gone up in price. And for a bigger laugh, I just looked on eBay. You can buy one on eBay. It's only $1,999.99 plus $50.30 shipping. Yes, these little units are quite valuable. And that's why I'm going through this whole process of restoring this one to make it work perfect, because they're worth a small fortune, and anybody in the archiving business, this is the holy grail for archiving. And see, I've got 3 Digital 8 players now at my disposal, and no, I will not be selling them. Even the one that the dead head is going in, I won't be selling. Hopefully I haven't missed any of my connectors. I think they're all through there. That'd be a piss off if I get it all back together, or go to put it all back together and I'm one connector out. Wouldn't that be something? I'd be really quite buffed if that was the case. Okay. So those ones are all in place. I don't remember whether that one went over top or underneath. Yeah, it looks like it comes underneath it here. Because this one plugs into here. And then this one plugs in over here. Yeah, it goes under like that, I think. Pretty sure. And this one's over here, it's not in place. There. This one here. And there. So I can make sure that I got everything in place here. Put these other screws in to hold the chassis in. The battery compartment. Comes in at the back here. Some of these screws are plastic threaded screws, right? Not metal. So the ones that go into plastic are the coarser threads. That one's plastic, that one's plastic. There's a metal screw there. getting that connector together is more of a challenge. You got to line it all up. That one's in place. Get this one in next down here. I believe this wire was dressed over top of this. So this goes under here like this, into this connector. Should get to frustrate me just enough before it seats in there, right? Come on, get in there. This one goes in over here. I think this is the last one. Fingers crossed I haven't forgotten anything. This one doesn't have anything. This is a test port. Do not make things difficult for me. Get the hell in that plug. Of course, there's one that's going to give me trouble, and that's this one here. All the other ones go back together. This one stupid plug is giving me difficulty. It's only got two conductors on it too. It's probably the switch or something, right? But that's the one that's giving me the most headache, is getting this stupid one in. I think it's seated. Find out pretty quick, won't I, when I turn it on, if it's going to work. This piece goes back in the bottom like that. Okay. Now, what screws are remaining? I'm sure there's a few. Got one over here. should be one more screw that holds this chassis in. One more gold colored screw. The rest of them are black. Just gotta remember where it went. I got that one. Usually they're arrow marked. You know, looks like it might have been there. I don't see an arrow marking it, but I see a threaded base, so I think it went to there. I'm sure everybody's jumping over me now telling me it was the wrong place, that I didn't take one out from there, but it goes in there, so that's where I put it. Okay, now the bottom cover can go on. And then I can use the black screws to put those ones in place. Okay, now that I've got the unit all back together, let's test it out and see whether it's going to do anything. Open sesame. I get my monitor cable so I can put it on my big monitor as well. Okay, that's playing there. Plug it into my monitor, and I have a picture on my monitor. Let's take a look at it. So there we have it. The GV-D800, I think is what this one's called. Is that what the model is? I forget the model of this thing. I've had it so long. It's a GV-D800. Digital 8, analog 8, high 8, playback and recorder. It records only in digital 8, but it'll play and record, or it'll play both 8mm, high 8, and of course digital 8. This is of course playback of a regular digital 8 tape that I made, and this is actually recorded in the LP speed. As you can see, the picture quality of this was fantastic. That's why I used it as a production format for many years. I used this as my production recorder. For when I edited, all my source tapes were shot on DV, and then I would edit on the computer and dump it over to the output over FireWire to digital 8 because the signal is compatible with DV. This also will play back analog tapes. So I'll put this on for just a few seconds because obviously if I play this for more than about 4 or 5 seconds, I'm going to get busted. This is A Few Good Men from Columbia Pictures. That was one of the few 8mm releases. So when I load the tape up and press play, it will switch. It will detect that it is a 8mm tape. I get a message on the screen telling me it's switching to analog, and it slows down the head drum, switches it over to analog, and there is the picture playback. And that's about all that I'm able to show. Put it on pause there because you know what will happen if I don't. But it does play analog tapes just fine. If I scan them, course, analog tapes, if you scan, you get the bars in the picture. That's normal for all analog recordings. If I go back to digital, you'll see what the difference is when I do a search on a digital tape. And there's playback. And if I go into search on here, that's how digital searches. Just a bunch of little bands in the picture as it's searching. Okay, that part's done. Now we can proceed and put the camera back together. So I can take this inside now. I'm done with this one. I'm happy. Now I've got a GV-D800 that works again. It works properly. Okay, I've got the camcorder chassis again. Here's the head drum that came out of the other unit. That's good for it. This is the one that I'm pretty certain that the head itself was quite badly worn, just because the fact that I clean it, and after it runs for 10 minutes or so, the head gets contaminated. And yes, it could have been that cleaning roller, but the thing is, the cleaning roller only makes contact when you load and unload the tape. So if the head was clean, when the tape went in, and it played for 10 minutes, and then the head clogged up, either the tape is shedding its oxide, which is unlikely that every single tape is going to do that, or there's a problem with the head drum. One of the little head chips may have a small scratch in it, and you'll never see it, of course, because the head chips themselves are microscopic, but we can get this thing to focus on the head. So there's the head drum. Get a little closer up shot of this thing if I can. So there's the head drum, and you'll see the little heads there. So all it would take is one of those heads to have a scratch in it, or a little chip, and as it's spinning, it's scratching the surface of the tape, which could in turn cause the head itself to clog. That's what I've guessed what's gone wrong. It's just that it's worn to the point where it's scratching the surface of the tape. And that's why I changed it and took the tape out of this donor camera. So now this is going to go back into the donor camera, and hopefully it's going to work. And then I'll just keep this for parts, because I have another camera that's very similar to this one that is in good working shape, and you guys saw it repaired on an earlier video. That was one that had a power supply problem that I fixed up. So I guess to mount the drum back in here, oh yeah, that's right, this one I didn't open the chassis. So let's open up the chassis on this, just to make my life a little bit easier, because this is in the way. So I'll just use my power supply to unload the tape transport. I think that's the polarity. There we go. This will bring the tape transport up. Ah, I didn't have this open. That's why. I was wondering why it was kind of sticking there a bit. It's because I didn't have the top flipped open that you have to do on these ones. So we'll just do that. That way the tape guide, this is what prevents static electricity from causing the tape to stick. So the tape goes over top of here, and this is a static discharge bar. Now I can put the drum back in place and make sure that nothing is sticking or jammed up, and put the screws back in. So we just drop the drum in. It only goes in one way, and there is little pins on here to line it up, make sure that it's turning freely. And then once I'm sure that that is, I'll get my 3 mounting screws to mount the drum. I'm just going to hold it in place with my finger here so that it doesn't move. And then I can put the screws in the bottom to hold it in place and tighten it in place. drum is turning freely, so we should be good to go as far as assembling it. I'm going to put this chassis back in place here so that it's out of the way. Here we go. Hitachi. This thing uses Hitachi chipset. Interesting. This is how I maintain some type of sanity when I'm doing these cameras. I keep all the screws in a separate container when I'm working on them. So I had 2 units apart, but I had 2 separate little containers with all the screws in it. That way I didn't get the screws mixed up. That way I can kind of keep my sanity while I'm working on these things, because these things are just bloody hard to work on. There was that one screw there. I think the camera port held the rest of it in. Over, I think. This goes over and on this way, does it not? Maybe I'm wrong. It kind of looks like it might go over and plug in like that. I think that's how it goes. be one more of these silver screws. Those are the internal screws. I'm just looking to see where the last one goes. I know there's one more that's going in here somewhere. I just don't remember where the heck I took it out of. It's right into that one. There. That's where it goes. And then this slides underneath here like this. That's better. I was wondering where the heck that last screw went. And there's where it goes. So now I can put the black screws in, you see. Sony were good at that way. The exterior screws were black and the interior screws were the silver or gold colored. So if you had any left over at the end, when you were done, you would know, was it an internal screw or was it an external one? Because of the color of it. So that's that in place. Now the side, the front and the side covers can go on now. This one here plugs in up the front here. I think the front cover's got to go on first. And this side cover, complete with the good thing I double checked on a plug that I missed. As I was checking everything, I realized that this little plug wasn't pushed in. And it's not going to work without that. That's for the video outputs and stuff. You know what I haven't heard in the last couple weeks? My eagle. My eagle has landed. The eagle has disappeared. The eagle that's been harassing me for the past 2 months by constantly whistling. I noticed about 2 weeks ago that it has gone. So I guess he found a mate, and he's taken off. With these things just pop together, no problem. What have I missed? Oh, damn, that's why. That's got to go under there. Okay, that's the reason why. Now it'll go together. I should just pop together just like that. I had a little tab here that was mispositioned. I was wondering why it wouldn't go together. There was a little plastic tab that was sticking out. That'll do it every time. Because normally these things to go together pretty simple. But then again, I haven't taken one of these things apart in many years. And even when I was taking them apart, I used to dread cameras. We had one day of the week at the shop. Friday was camcorder day. I didn't touch camcorders any other day of the week when I was working. Usually my schedule was Monday. It was VCRs, all VCRs, because they'd all come in over the weekend from movie rentals clogging up the heads. So Monday morning it was VCR day, and the fact that a couple of the guys worked Tuesday to Saturday every week. So Monday there was nobody to do pickups in the morning, right? We'd pick up TVs and bring them in. And I would usually have to go out and pick up the TVs with one of the other guys for the large sets. But I couldn't pick them up by myself, so we didn't pick TVs up on Monday. So Monday was VCR and stereo day. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday was TVs for the most part. I do VCRs and stereos as well, but because our TVs were scheduled to be picked up and delivered on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays, that was the days that we did a lot of televisions. And then Friday, well, that was the day that was set aside. That was a special day of the week that was set aside to do these stupid camcorders, which I just loved. So whenever I worked on cameras, it was always on a Friday. Make sure that the switch works. It comes on. It has a picture. Let's see if it will play this tape until the heads clog. Watch it stop clogging the heads now. Wouldn't that be funny? And there it plays it. I'll let this thing play and see how long it plays before the head clogs. I just noticed something. I got no sound. I got to take this thing apart again. I got no sound out of the little speaker on here unless it's turned off. But I don't know. I don't think you can turn it off. I hear it beeping. Wonder why I got no sound. Okay, it looks like it's just the speaker on the camera because
I am sitting here.
it's got sound. I know this camera has problems because the DV output doesn't work on it. And now I remember, I don't think I ever tested that. I know that the DV output doesn't work on it. And I guess the speaker for the LCD is not working either. Either that or it's not plugged in properly. I'll have to could double check that. But this has got an old head in it, so I don't know if I want to spend any more time on this thing because this is just a parts machine now. But I'm going to let it play and see whether the head contaminates again now that it's in this one here. Because it certainly went bad when it was in the other machine. Anyway, no sound out of the little speaker. I don't know if I'm going to investigate that or not because this thing's just going to go in a box and just be sitting there for parts, basically. Now that I've done a heart transplant, basically, I call it a heart transplant because the video head is the heart of a VCR or a camera. If the head don't work, the camera don't work. Simple as that. But it'll be interesting to see if this thing clogs the head now that I've got it playing on this thing. Anyway, the head needed to be changed on the other one anyway because it has, the head that's in here now probably has, I will say at least 2,000 plus hours on it. It was used when it was in that GV-D800. It was used as my edit deck for mastering and playback. So when I did a production, I shot on mini DV. Actually, I shot on various formats, but when I went all digital, I shot on mini DV, and then I edited on the computer, and I output it to digital 8. Then once the digital 8 tape was finished, then I'd rewind the tape, and I would then make copies off of that onto VHS because at this point in time, people were still using VHS tape. So the digital 8 deck had a lot of hours. If they wanted it on DVD, then I went straight to DVD. I usually would dub it to digital 8, or I'd create a long file. But in the early days of the PC, we were still editing at the time. When this was done, I was probably still using Windows 98, and I was using an RT2000 system. So the DVD authoring software was really quite clunky back then in 2000, 98 or 99 or 2000. I guess it was 2001. So back at that point, I probably was still using Windows 98, and I may have edited onto digital 8 tape and then put it into a DVD recorder. Like plugged the FireWire out from the camera into a standalone DVD recorder and made a DVD that way as opposed to authoring it on the computer because authoring on computer just was so time consuming. in those days of slow machines to render out. So anyway, that's beside the point. This thing hasn't clogged the heads yet, which is pretty disappointing because it didn't run this long when I had this video drum in the other machine. I was expecting that this would contaminate and start pixelating, and then it could prove to me that the head itself has got a chip in it. Oh, wait a minute. Hey, wait a minute. It looks like it might be starting to do it. I just saw a little bit of disturbance over here. Oh, there I am with my camera. Oh, there's Bob. So he wasn't running the second camera on this one. What the heck? He had the same camera. He had a GL2 as well. Or is it GL2 or GL1? GL1 maybe. He had the same camera anyway. I had one of those as well. That was the second camera on the roof. I thought it was him doing it. It shows what I remember. But oh, look at that. Price of gas, 79.9. 79.9 a liter. Now it's $1.79 a liter. Incredible, huh? Camera's back together. One thing left to check on it, and that is that it plays analog tapes. I have no sound from the built-in speaker. I'm not going to investigate that any further because this is never going to see its use as a camera. It's just a parts machine for me. And if I need to play a tape off it to make a copy of something, the outputs are working on the line outputs working anyway. So the lack of sound on the built-in speaker is of no consequence. As you can see, it's playing analog. When I plug it in, we have sound through the TV. And there's the picture there. And we'll just get off of that before I get into trouble with copyright for movies. Anyway, that's it. It's back together. I'm going to let this thing play for a bit and see if the head clogs up. And maybe it will, maybe it won't. I mean, it's gone longer now than it was going when that drum was in the other machine, which makes you kind of wonder, what was up? Was it some contamination that was getting on the drum from that cleaner, and it was just taking a while to work its way in and actually contaminate the head? We don't know. But what I can tell you is that this drum here has had this cleaning tape put through it far too many times trying to get a recording to play back. So every time you put one of these dry cleaning tapes through, you're reducing a bit of life, and this thing's got probably, I'm guessing, 2,000 hours on it. Anyway, that's it for this one. This video is probably dragged on a lot longer than I would have liked, but I wanted to do the entire the camera and Digital 8 service all in one video, and I've done it. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.